We have so much to cover by way of truth here in this powerful, well-told story that is Exodus 1. We need to first ground ourselves in the fact that while a beautifully told story, a well-delivered narrative, it is, and even though there's so much theological truth to apply from this, we're going to be doing no such spiritualizing of the matters of the book of Exodus in such a way that removes it from true history. The Bible is inerrant and true, authoritative in everything that it declares. So, just because you can pick up 90% of the books at your local Christian bookshop, and almost all of the ones on Exodus will tell you that this is historically inaccurate, but that's okay because we still love Jesus, throw them away, or at least what they say in that much. This is true, inerrant history given by the hand of God, and if you care to look into it, the more we dig up and find out, the more the history finds itself agreeing with what the Bible says. It's not history I have a problem with, it's those darned historians, okay? It's not the science I have a problem with, it's those darned scientists. But here we are, the book of Exodus is true history, and as it picks up, it's picking up in the middle of the story. We start in verse 1, and it says here, these are the names of the sons of Israel. We're already in this middle of a story that God has been writing and developing with his dealings with one family that would become to be known as Israel. So just for some context, the book of Genesis is one book, first book in the Bible, and its history, the story that it tells in that one book, the first book in the Bible, has already encapsulated half of the Old Testament history. So from Adam until Joseph, you've got about 2,000 years encapsulated in the book of Genesis. It is an enormous, unraveling story from creation onwards. And so by the time we get to Exodus, we're 1,500 years away from Jesus. And we are 2,000 years or so, or more, 2,500 years, or maybe a bit stretched more, since the creation of Adam in the garden and his fall. So we're right there. But if you just compare the first two the beginnings of the first two books of the Bible, Genesis 1, how does that start? And Exodus 1, how does that start? You'll just find they're worlds apart. There has been so much happen in developing the story from God created the heavens and the earth, and the world was without form and covered in water, and it was empty, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. That's how Genesis 1 starts. And then by the time we get to Exodus 1, we've got civilizations, we've got inventions, we've got different ethnicities. There's been a whole geographically destructive deluge of the flood through Noah. We've got rise and fall of kingdoms. We've got families, weaponry, wars, politics, culture, everything. We're in a very distant world from Genesis 1 to Exodus 1, and we're in a very distant world from Exodus 1 and 2023, of course. But here we are, back in Exodus chapter 1, and one of the most important people in the book of Genesis is the forefather of the Israelites, Abraham. And so God had visited this pagan, idol-worshipping man in the land of Ur, and he grabs him and he pulls him out and he says, I'm going to make you into a nation. You're old and you're barren, you have no children, but you and your wife are going to have children that become children. And he says, there's going to be a whole nation come out of you, and you're going to be powerful. I'm going to give you a land area in this beautiful area called Canaan. You're going to have that. You're going to have a nation of people, and through that people in that nation, eventually, I will bless the whole world. And of course, there's the threefold covenant between God and Abraham. I'll make you a people, I'll give you a land, and through your race will come the Messiah. That's what was promised to Abraham. And eventually he has Isaac. Isaac then has twins, and one of those twins is Jacob, whose name ends up getting changed to Israel, and it's Israel who has 12 sons, and it's those 12 sons that then become the household heads, or the beginning of the tribes of Israel. So if you've ever heard of the 12 tribes of Israel, that's where it comes from, the 12 sons of Israel, who then became families and clans and tribes and enormous people groups. That's where we land. But before those 12 men have their children, they have, one of the brothers is named Joseph. He's the guy with the multicolored coat back when rainbows were good things, and the godly people waved him around. Anyway, so Joseph was given a cloak, and he had prophecies about his brothers all bowing down to him and them all serving him, and lo and behold, they hated him. Go figure that out. And so his brothers, his 11 brothers, sold him as a slave to whoever was passing by, told their dad, Israel, that he was dead. That's how much he hated. Just in case you're a younger sibling, take note. I would bet that your siblings are not more godly than these guys anyway. And so he's sold off, and he goes to Egypt as a servant, but providentially by God's hand, he's serving in the house of a very high officer. Time goes by and he's wrongly imprisoned and then released again into the courts of Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh utilizes Joseph's prophetic spiritual wisdom to foresee that a famine is coming that will destroy the whole land. And so the Pharaoh, with help of Joseph, rule Egypt. And Pharaoh basically just kicks back and says, Joseph, it's yours. The only thing you can't have in all the land is my chair. That's for me. You do everything else. And so he was the prime minister of all of Egypt, this son of Israel. And he doesn't know anything about his family, but he's just here laboring to keep his people's stores up and keeping them alive in the midst of famine. And eventually, 11 Hebrew boys come to his front door and start knocking and saying, our family, my father's dying, our family's poor, can we come and live in Egypt? You guys were wise enough to store up stores for the famine. And here's Joseph, recognizing his brothers bowed down to him. Man, if that's not an I told you so moment right there, I don't know what is. And so he tricks him a little bit, but eventually he accepts the whole of his family and his father that he had not seen for so long, Israel. They came down. And this is what the first few verses of our book this morning in Exodus told us. The Israel and his sons all went down into Egypt. This is the last few chapters of the book of Genesis. And they settled there, and the Pharaoh gave to the family of Joseph the most beautiful land called Goshen. It was plentiful. They had lambs. They had all that they needed, about 70 people all in all, and their youngest brother was ruling on the throne. Eventually, Joseph would die at the age of 110. Verse 6 here tells us Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation. We're told in Genesis 50 he was old enough to see his great-great-grandchildren. Okay, 110 years old, great-great-grandchildren he sees. So they are multiplying, they are growing, and that shows us the next part of the story that starts unfolding.